The Overlords laughed at human spirit, then felt its unyielding force. In the vast expanse of the Orion Arm, where stars burned like cold jewels against the black velvet of space, the Vexari Dominion held unchallenged sway. For millennia, they had expanded their glittering empire across hundreds of worlds, their towering spires of iridescent crystal rising from conquered planets like accusations against the sky. The Vexari were ancient, graceful, their bodies elongated and luminous, skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of thoughts too complex for lesser minds to grasp. They moved with deliberate elegance, their voices a melodic hum that carried the weight of eons. They called themselves the Overlords, and to them, the galaxy was a garden to be tended, its lesser species mere weeds to be pruned or cultivated as they saw fit. When first contact came with the small blue world called Earth, orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the Dominion's surveyors barely registered concern. The humans were primitive by galactic standards, barely a century into true spaceflight, their vessels' crude alloys and chemical rockets compared to the Vexari's elegant warp lattices. Their biology was fragile, soft flesh, short lifespans, prone to injury and disease. The Overlords reviewed the data with faint amusement. "Look at them, High Arbiter Vex," Thal murmured in the Grand Conclave chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Harmony. His tendrils waved lazily as holographic projections of human cities flickered before the assembly. They cling to their single fragile orb, dreaming of stars they cannot yet reach. They will bow as all others have. The assembly rippled with soft laughter, a sound like wind through crystal chimes. And so the decree was issued. Earth would join the Dominion as a client world. Tribute would be paid in resources, rare metals, biological samples, cultural artifacts for the archives. In return, the humans would receive protection, technology trickle-downs, and the honor of serving a greater purpose. Refusal was not contemplated. No species had ever refused. The first delegation arrived in orbit above Earth on a crisp autumn morning in the year 2147. The Vexari cruiser descended like a falling star, its hull gleaming with captured sunlight. From its bays emerged the emissaries, tall, slender figures cloaked in flowing robes of liquid light, accompanied by floating drones that hummed softly. They requested an audience with Earth's Unified Council in New Geneva. The humans received them politely. The council chamber was simple by comparison. Polished wood, wide windows overlooking Lake Geneva, a long table where representatives from every continent sat. No holograms, no grandeur, just people. High Arbiter Vextal floated slightly above the floor, his bioluminescence dimmed to a courteous glow. "We come in peace," he intoned, voice resonating through the room. "The Dominion offers you a place among the stars. Submit your tribute, accept our guidance, and thrive under our light." The human spokesperson, Ambassador Elena Vasquez, a woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair and steady brown eyes, regarded him calmly. "We appreciate the offer," she said, "but Earth has no tribute to give. We are a free people." A ripple passed through the Vexari delegation. Vextal's patterns flickered in surprise. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. The Dominion has spoken." Elena leaned forward slightly. "Then perhaps you should listen." The Overlords did not listen. They interpreted the refusal as ignorance, a childish defiance born of inexperience. They withdrew the delegation with warnings of consequences. Probes were dispatched to monitor Earth. Sanctions were prepared. Blockades of trade routes the humans barely used. EMP pulses to disrupt their primitive satellites. Months passed. The Vexari watched, expecting panic, pleas for mercy. Instead, they saw nothing dramatic. Humans continued their lives, cities bustled, farms were harvested, children played in parks. Satellites were quietly reinforced, shipyards in the asteroid belt hummed with activity, small, determined activity. The Dominion grew impatient. A second delegation arrived, this time with a display of force. 3 battlecruisers in high orbit, their weapons arrays glowing faintly. Vex. Thal addressed the council again, this time from the safety of his flagship's bridge, projected large across the chamber. "Your defiance ends now," he declared. "Surrender your resources or we will take them." A young engineer named Marcus Hale, part of the technical advisory team, stood up uninvited. He was in his 30s, wiry, with grease-stained hands and a quiet intensity. "You want our spirit?" he asked, voice steady. "Come and get it." The chamber fell silent. Thal's glow brightened in irritation. "You speak of spirit as if it were a commodity. It is nothing, fleeting emotion in fragile vessels." Marcus smiled faintly, then watched. The Vexari began their campaign. They targeted the outer colonies first: Mars, the lunar bases, the belt outposts. Small fleets descended, expecting quick capitulation. Instead, they met resistance that was unexpected. On Ceres, a mining station crewed by 200 humans refused to power down. When Vexari troops landed, armored in shimmering fields, the miners did not flee, they fought. Not with advanced weaponry, but with improvised tools, plasma cutters turned into weapons, drilling rigs repurposed as traps, oxygen lines rigged to explode. The Vexari lost 3 squads before retreating in confusion. The humans had not won, they had simply refused to lose. Reports filtered back to the Eternal Harmony. Vexthal dismissed them. Primitives defending holes in rock. It means nothing, but the pattern repeated. On Titan, a research outpost held against orbital bombardment by retreating into subsurface oceans, using cryovolcanic vents for cover. The Vexari landed troops expecting slaughter. Instead, they found humans who had adapted, suits modified for methane breathing, weapons forged from local ice and hydrocarbons. The invaders were repelled, frostbitten, and disoriented. The Dominion escalated. They deployed their elite Praetorian legions, warriors bred for perfection, their bodies augmented with crystalline implants. They struck at Earth itself, targeting major cities with precision strikes meant to cow rather than destroy. New York, Beijing, Lagos, Mumbai. The strikes landed. Buildings crumbled, fires raged. The overlords waited for surrender. It never came. Instead, something stirred. Across the planet, ordinary people began to act. A firefighter in Brooklyn dragged survivors from rubble for 36 hours without rest. A doctor in Shanghai performed triage in the streets, her hands steady even as shockwaves rattled the ground. Engineers in orbital stations jury-rigged defense grids from salvaged parts, turning weather satellites into makeshift lasers. And then there were the volunteers. Marcus Hale had not been idle. In the months since first contact, he and a network of like-minded engineers had worked in secret. They called it Project Ember, not a weapon of war, but something simpler, a message. When the Vexari Armada gathered for the final assault, positioning above Earth in a display of overwhelming might, the humans activated it. From every continent, from hidden bunkers and orbital platforms, a single broadcast went out. Not in radio waves, but in a tight-band subspace pulse that pierced the Vexari shields like they were mist. It was not a declaration of war, it was a story. The broadcast showed human history, not the polished version, but the raw, unfiltered truth. Images of ancestors crossing oceans in wooden boats, of people standing against tyrants with nothing but words and will, of mothers shielding children from bombs, of scientists toiling in poverty to unlock the atom, of artists creating beauty in the face of despair. And woven through it all, a single thread: endurance. The Vexari watched in silence as the images played across their bridges. They saw a species that had clawed its way from caves to the stars, not through perfection, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to quit. They saw loss after loss, yet each time rising again. Not stronger in body, perhaps, but unbreakable in resolve. High Arbiter Vex. Thal stared at the feed, his bioluminescence flickering erratically. For the first time in centuries, he felt something unfamiliar, uncertainty. On the bridge, a junior officer whispered, "They do not yield!" Vex Thal's tendrils curled inward. No, they do not. The Armada held position, weapons charged, yet no order to fire came. Down on Earth, in the ruins of a command center beneath Geneva, Elena Vasquez watched the skies. Beside her stood Marcus Hale, exhausted but unbowed. "They stopped," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. They saw. In the days that followed, the Vexari withdrew. Not in defeat, not yet, but in contemplation. The Eternal Harmony lingered in high orbit, a silent sentinel. Communications came tentative at first. "We misjudged," Vex's Thal admitted in a private channel to Elena. His voice lacked its former melody. It was subdued, almost fragile. "Your spirit, it is not weakness. It is a force we have not encountered." Elena smiled tiredly. "It's just what we are." The Dominion did not conquer Earth that day. Instead, something shifted in the galactic order. Word spread through the stars. The Overlords had paused before a single, defiant world. And in that pause, awe took root. Years later, when ambassadors from 100 species gathered on neutral ground to discuss the new era, a Vexari elder stood and spoke. "We came as conquerors," he said, his glow soft and steady. "We left as students. For in humanity, we glimpse something eternal, not power born of technology or longevity, but of heart that refuses to break." He looked out over the assembly, tendrils still. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.